Hi, I'm Dan, and welcome to Gaming Comments episode 17. Today I'm talking about sequels. Last week, I made, I guess you could call it a list of games I was looking forward to in the coming year. Well, I shouldn't say coming year since it's here now. But anyways, some friends of mine said I had too many sequels on this list. And I'm just going to explain why there's so many sequels. Obviously, I have no problems with companies making sequels. And I am not someone against new IPs. I actually look forward to new IPs. But the problem with new IPs is that you don't know that much information on most of them. And the ones one of them, being Destiny, that I looked forward to was just because of the company that's making that game. It's just, they never failed me before. So I was looking forward to Destiny. Just because Bungie was making it. Now, you go to some other new IPs, I may be interested in them, but I don't know enough to be really excited about them. I always look forward to new IPs, but I want to play new games. It gets tiresome playing the same game over and over again. And there lies in some of the problems I have with sequels. It's not necessarily the fact that companies make sequels. It makes complete sense on a business level. You've had success with the game, why not get more by making a sequel? And sometimes it makes perfect sense to make a sequel, and sometimes it doesn't. One good example of a company that does sequels right is Nintendo. When you look at the Legend of Zelda series, they have always released good sequels. There's a couple there that were not the greatest, but overall, if you look at the whole span of all the sequels they've made for Legend of Zelda, the majority of them are really good games. And of course, the latest one, A Link Between Worlds, I highly recommend it. If you have a 3DS, go ahead and play it. It's one of the best Zelda games they have made in years. Especially considering it's just a top-down overhead view. They've clearly said it's a sequel to A Link to the Past. And you get that whole feel. If you like that game, you'll love this game. But I don't want to get too much into this. I do plan eventually making an episode about Legend of Zelda somewhere down the line. But not now. Going back onto topic, companies that I find do sequels bad are companies like Activision, who once they hit pay dirt with one IP, they automatically go into a constant cycle of sequels. And it's not like, okay, here's a sequel, and a couple years down the road we'll make another one. No, these are sequels every year pumping out. Usually, what they do is they'll have two companies. One makes it one year, one makes it the other year, so they have a couple years in development with that specific company. And it makes sense for them to do it, I guess you could say, in a business standpoint, but it hurts in the long run because people start to get tired of those IPs. And I think it was evident with Call of Duty Ghosts that yes, it sold a lot, but a lot of people I know who played the game are not happy with it. Not because the game is very bad, but just for the simple fact that they're getting tired of the same old, and they're not bringing enough new to the table. That's what makes a good sequel, is when you take a formula and do something new with it. You can't just tweak it slightly. Then it doesn't work. It might work for, say, a sports title, but even then, you kind of get tired of it. I used to love playing sports titles back in the day, and I haven't played a sports title in years. just for the simple fact that I'm tired of it. I don't want to shell out $60 every year for another hockey game, another football game. It's just exhausting, really. EA's also guilty of that with their sports titles, but they don't bring it to some of the hardcore games that they put out, which is a good thing. You need that time to invest in those games to make a sequel really memorable. When you're pumping something out every year, it's just not that good. You lose interest, and eventually they have to kill a franchise, just like what they did with Guitar Hero. They had a great franchise that they just decide, okay, we're going to start pumping out titles every year, and then we're going to pump out 2 titles a year, 3 titles a year, and people got tired of it, and now the whole music genre is basically dead because of it. There are just a few titles now keeping it alive, like Rocksmith basically is the only thing I could think up top of my head that's still going. But yeah, between what Activision was doing with Guitar Hero and what EA and Harmonix was doing with Rock Band, they just sucked the life out of that genre. And that's one thing I'm worried about when you start pumping out all these games constantly. I can definitely see that happening with Skylanders within the next couple of years, and I doubt it'll happen to first-person shooters in general, but you might see it with the realistic war-type shooters, where people just get tired of that scenario and probably want something new. Whether it be what Gears of War or Halo brings to the table, where it's, yes, you're having a war going on, but it's a little more over the top. You have alien weaponry, and it's hard to explain. It just feels different than your typical war game, like you'd see in a Call of Duty or even most Tom Clancy titles. But what my best advice I can give to any developer out there that wants to make a game, plan for sequels. I maybe leave an open ending so you can make a sequel, but don't release it like right off the bat. Give it a few years. Let people digest the first game, and when people start crying for it, you can release another one. Because eventually, if it's that good of a game, people are going to want the sequel. And there's nothing wrong with that. But start with a strong new IP, and then work with that. Make it better. You just don't want a sequel that does the exact same thing. You want a sequel that takes the same formula and goes a step beyond. That's what makes a good sequel. And when people are getting tired of just a step beyond, do a complete overhaul. I'm not saying take the whole franchise and change it all up. Just make it feel completely different. Some companies have done that and has had quite good success. And sometimes when you make that complete overhaul into a franchise, it just ends up ruining it. So you have to be careful when you do that. Well, that's all I have to say for today. If you like what you see, feel free to subscribe, or you can follow me on Twitter at Gaming Comments. Next week, I want to talk about PlayStation Now. If you don't know, CES, the Computer Electronic... Oh god, I completely screwed that up. But anyways, if you've been following the CES coverage, you know that Sony has announced PlayStation Now. I'm excited about it. I want to talk about it next week. I'm just hoping a few more tidbits comes out so I have more to talk about. So, until then, bye.